US and Israel's war in Iran is showing no sign of stopping. Over 3 weeks of constant bombardment, fresh threat of escalation is emerging from both sides. President Trump has said Iran's power plants will be targeted if Hormuz is not opened, while Tehran has vowed to completely close the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation. The war in West Asia seems to be moving from military targets to energy and water. Here's a report.
Bombs, jets, missiles and drones are flying across West Asia. From land strikes to naval warfare, waves of attacks and counterattacks are offsetting the security calculus, not just in the Persian Gulf, but also for the continents far away. The White House is now threatening to up the stakes. US President Donald Trump has issued a 48-hour ultimatum for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz or face attacks on energy infrastructure. Trump's deadline expires on March 24th. Trump has threatened to obliterate Iran's power plants, starting with the biggest one, the Bushehr nuclear power plant. The Damavand natural gas plant is also in the line of fire. Iran has refused to heed Trump's threats. It says that if its energy infrastructure is hit, it will completely shut the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran also says it will blow up major energy facilities across West Asia in retaliation for any US attack jeopardizing its energy security, and it has threatened to plunge the entire Gulf region into the dark. Iran has warned the entire neighborhood of a total blackout. Local media has published a list of energy facilities that will feel the brunt of Tehran's retaliation. Power generation plants in the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait are now in Iran's crosshairs. Attacks on these facilities will threaten power supplies to the biggest cities in the Gulf region. Doha, Kuwait, Riyadh, Dubai and Abu Dhabi could face major power cuts if Iran successfully strikes these facilities. The war has not just moved on to power grids, but also water. The Arabian Peninsula has massive oil reserves, but it lacks a commodity that fuels life: water. Countries across the region rely heavily on water desalination to quench the thirst of its population. A majority of these water desalination plants are located in the Persian Gulf region. Gulf countries produce about 40% of the world's entire desalinated water. The region houses over 400 desalination plants. 40 to 60% of the total water consumption in the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain and Qatar comes from desalination plants. Iran's sworn enemy, Israel, gets over 80% of its water through the desalination process. Attacks on these plants could create a water crisis in the entire region, making life difficult for the common people. A water war is not a distant possibility. Iran has accused the US and Israel of attacking its desalination facility on Keshem Island. Since then, Bahrain, Kuwait and Dubai have reported attacks on water desalination plants at different intervals. Further escalation could see missiles and drones locking on these facilities. Iran has so far maintained its eye for an eye retaliation tactic. When the US strikes its missile centers, Iran hits back with attacks on US bases. Strikes on its banks invited drones and missiles flying towards American economic assets in West Asia. After attacks on its gas fields, Tehran set multiple gas fields on fire across the region. Now, if the US attacks Iran's energy sites, an expected Iranian retaliation lies on the horizon. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
Joining us live from Washington, D.C. is Mr. Peter Kuznick. He's a professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. Professor Kuznick, thank you for your time. To what end and for how long will President Trump issue threats, especially towards Iran? Critics say that once the strait is open, then President Trump will declare victory on Iran. However, Iran is not backing down. How do you think the issue at the Strait of Hormuz is going to play out?
The Iranians hold the cards here. The Iranians can cut off traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. They've opened it up now to friendly countries, and they've said that even neutral countries, if they apply for permits, can also use the Strait of Hormuz. They say it's just their enemies who will be banned from the strait, which gives some relief to some of the Asian countries. But in terms of Donald Trump, he's clearly lost the initiative here. And he's becoming more and more unhinged by the hour. First, he'll say at 6:30 that we've won, Iran is destroyed, they've lost the war, we can do anything we want. And then an hour later, he says if they don't open up the strait within 48 hours, we're going to hit all of their energy facilities. And the Iranians retaliate that they're going to take out energy facilities across the south. For those desalination plants and facilities, and the Iranians can hit them. But what worries me even more is the fact that the Iranians were targeting Dimona, and that Trump is threatening to take out Bushehr. Once we're going after the nuclear facilities, I mean, if the Iranians have a successful strike on Dimona and they hit the town of Dimona, they didn't hit the nuclear facility from what we know, but that would make large parts of Israel uninhabitable, possibly for thousands of years. And if the Israelis or the U.S. takes out Bushehr, that's going to spread radiation throughout the region also. So we've entered a new stage of craziness here and dangerous recklessness. And Trump just seems to contradict himself by the minute. One minute he'll proclaim victory, and the next minute he'll say that this is a terrible situation and we've got to act crazily. One minute he'll call on the Europeans and NATO and China and Japan and South Korea to open up the strait, and the next minute he'll say, oh, we don't need anybody's help. But clearly, the situation is not in his control at this point, and his mind might not be in his control.
Professor Kuznick, there have been a cluster of protests denouncing the war in America, and there's a common chant by most people. They say, we don't want to fight and die for Israel. This is Netanyahu's war and not America's. Professor, first, I want your quick reaction to the growing opposition to this war, and then I'll have a follow-up to that.
We just saw Takaichi visit the White House. You know how much support the war has in Japan? 9%. That's the attitude around the world. Nobody wanted this war. It's an illegal war, an immoral war, and the protests are starting. But also we see defections even from the MAGA base that Trump has. Joe Kent's resignation in protest the other day, the chief of U.S. counterterrorism, was a very, very devastating blow to Trump and the lies, because the United States has been lied into one war after another. And the world has seen the United States at war constantly, as Jimmy Carter said. And so the world doesn't want this war, and people are hurting. Not only the oil and gas, but 1/3 of the world's fertilizer goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Now farmers around the world are starting to feel the pinch, and they can't start growing their crops. They won't be able to cultivate them. The repercussions of this are so enormous, even above oil and gas, which is devastating in the United States and elsewhere around the world. So, of course, the protests are going to be building. And of course, they're going to target the U.S. and Israel as the two pariah states. But what worries me when I see this desperation on Trump's part is that his ultimate card that he could play is the nuclear card, not just hitting nuclear facilities, but actually using nuclear weapons. And that really worries me. That keeps me up at night. I saw, on the December 30th meeting at Mar-a-Lago between Netanyahu and Trump, Netanyahu starts praising him and building him up and saying, you're going to be the greatest American president ever if you declare war with or go to war with Iran. All your predecessors were afraid to do that, but you're the bravest and most brilliant American president ever. Well, that same logic that got Trump into this war could also be used in terms of using nuclear weapons. The one remaining taboo that Trump hasn't broken is the nuclear taboo. Well, what if the Hegseths and the Millers and the Netanyahus say you're going to be the first president ever willing to use nuclear weapons? That's crazy. Yeah, I think it's totally crazy. But you look at Trump's behavior, he's so erratic at this point. I don't know what's going on in that little head of his.
All right. I had a third question, but I think we are out of time, Professor. But thank you very much for your time and for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.